All right, back-to-back days here on the Audible. We were on yesterday. We're back today. Kim Bokamper with you. If you're watching us on Periscope. You're welcome to get your questions in. Just go to the bottom message bar. Send your questions in. We'll ask them. Joining me today on the Audible, Adam Beasley from the Miami Herald. And had the chance to sit next to Adam today and watch practice out there. And so this is the second practice you've seen. You saw one last week. Is this one any better than the one you saw last week?
Well, if you're
a little ramshackle out there today.
If you're a fan of defense, it was a great day, right? What were there? 2 picks by Tannehill. T.J. McDonald had one of them. Nate Allen had the other. How about Charles Harris? What he did to Tunsil today?
Well, I mean, he did a. I keep going back to these. Look, they're not in pads. You know
that first step is the same no matter what he's wearing.
That first step may be the same, but that first shot from Tunsil without pads may not be the same now as it is when he gets.
I will say this though, Tunsil took them hard. He had a false start right after getting blasted.
No, believe me, he certainly felt him come off the edge the first time. We barely touched him, whiffed on him, and then the next time jumped off sides on the next snap count. So. Yeah, well, look, it's good to see. I mean, the other things you saw him out there running around, kind of rotating in. They're already kind of rotating guys into, I don't want to look at starters and this and that because we're so far away from that. It doesn't make much sense to go there. But it's nice to see him incorporating these guys in. Tankersley got a lot of snaps out there. McMillan out there getting, the young guys. To me, it's nice to see the young guys getting the opportunity to get snaps with even the second team guys, guys that have been there, veterans, and kind of working with them is a good thing to see. But for me, it's this is like the like you look at these rookies. I still imagine the rookies out there practicing, their adrenaline level has to be so high because this is the first time they're facing guys. They're facing these guys and doing this. So I think you got to kind of wait for them to calm down a little bit to really get a good read on what they're all about. Yeah,
we saw a lot of McMillan, you mentioned. Tankersley's coming on. I know he's not a rookie, but Mike Hall got to run out there today.
Yeah.
So I think the linebackers are as deep as the group that they had in a while. They're still waiting for Meese to get cleared medically from the neck, obviously. But you got Alonzo rotating through, McMillan. No one's talking about the new guy, Lawrence Timmons. He might be the best of the bunch. So a lot of talent. Defense was obviously a huge concern last year. They didn't have enough bodies after they hit those injuries midway through the season. I think they've got enough to get over that hump this year. They got, 4 boundary corners now competing for 2 spots?
Well, we've talked about it a lot on this show, Adam, is the fact that the byproduct of all the injuries they had last year is the growth of the depth, the quality of the depth, because the guys like the Tony Lippett's and the Neville Hewitts and the Steens and the Urbecks and those guys that had to play a lot of snaps have all gotten better for that opportunity, and now it's helped the depth across the board get better.
Well, how many of those guys appeared in a playoff game?
Yeah, right.
I mean, you can't buy that kind of experience. So you're right. You want your frontline players healthy. You want them out there. Certainly there's a drop-off from starters to backups, but maybe that gap's closing a little bit.
Well, I mean, you talked about last year kind of smoke and mirrors, how they got to, we were talking earlier, a little bit of smoke and mirrors as they got to 10 wins, but they wouldn't have got to 10 wins had those backups come in and played at a higher level, than anybody expected them to come. I mean, I'm talking about Tony Lippett. When you saw Tony Lippett in there, go, oh my God, this is way premature for him to be out there as a starter, and he accounted for himself pretty damn well during the course of the season.
And if you're going to rely on him as your number 4 corner this year, you've got to be
feeling pretty darn good about it.
Absolutely ecstatic,
no doubt about it. So I think those are the things you kind of look at. And one of the guys you talk about that jumped out to me today is T.J. McDonald. He's going to miss the first 8 games. He'll get to practice all through the offseason, get to go into training camp, play in the preseason games. Then he's out for 8 games. But, man, I tell you, you watch him. It's funny how you can watch a guy out here, even in no pads, and you kind of see the way he carries himself and the way he goes about his business. This kid knows how to play, and he made a great interception in the end zone, a very athletic interception in the end zone this morning or during the practice today.
Well, he's a big dude, too.
And he's in size-wise, guy that has a reputation for being willing to come up to the line of scrimmage and lay some wood on some people. So it's going to be interesting to see how, especially coming in after 8 games when everyone's kind of beat up at that point, he comes in with a pair of fresh legs and ready to go. I think that's going to be interesting for the Dolphins down the stretch.
Yeah, I think they you make great points on TJ. I think they last year they have 25, 26, whatever it was, defensive players, maybe around that range. They probably at this point last year knew who 23 or 24 of them are. now maybe 20.
Yeah,
perhaps. There are a lot of jobs on the line this training camp. Preseason is going to be hugely important, and the coaches get a break now. They get to keep the 90-man roster all the way through to the last cuts. So you're going to have some decisions made, I think, late August, and it's going to be tough. Particularly on that defensive line, you're going to cut some players that are going to go play for other teams this year.
Well, but isn't that an indication of the team getting better and better and better? When you are going to release guys that other people are going to want. I mean, it used to be, we were the guys looking around going, hey, geez, let's look, what's going to fall from the tree here that may make us better as we go into the regular season. And it's nice that the tide is kind of shifted a little bit. But like everything else, they've got to stay healthy. They've got to get the job done. The rookies that you've seen out there so far in their limited space, certainly Tankersley looks like he's very comfortable out there doing what he's doing. We talked about Charles Harris a little bit. I tell you, the guy that I looked at a little bit today, and of course, this is in no pads, and this is in small. You saw him last week. I saw him one day today. But I can tell you this, between now and the time they come back for training camp, this kid, Isaac Asiata, better find a way to strengthen up a little bit because he's been getting a little overpowered, at least in the practice I watched today, and had a chance to talk to him a little bit and ask him how it's going. He goes, man, I've struggled a little bit. And he knows he's struggling a little bit. So somewhere between now and training camp, he's got to find a way to change his game around a little bit.
Well, I guess if there is a silver lining for the Dolphins is they got a lot of depth on the inside. Pouncey obviously is not going to practice at least until the start of training camp, maybe beyond. So the Steens, the Urbecks, they all rotate through. We saw Ted Larson out there today. I don't think they really know yet what they want to be on the interior offensive line. Obviously,
I think they're fairly comfortable with the people they've got.
Right.
But I'm not sure they could tell you right now. I would say they're probably pretty certain that Bushrod's going to be the guy on that right side.
Right.
But they know they've got somebody in there that can fill that left guard position. But I would say right now, if you ask them, put a gun to their head and ask them, they wouldn't be able to tell you who it is right now.
And a guy like Steen, who played well last year, then got banged up and lost his starting job towards the end of the year. He's put on a whole mess of weight, so he's a bigger, stronger guy now. Urbeck's been around; he's a pro. So I don't know how it's going to shake out. But
throw Ted Larson in there, see what he's going to do.
The Dolphins need Mike Pouncey to be healthy. They need at least 14, 15 games out of Mike Pouncey this year. He hasn't played a full season since 2012. When he goes, basically the offensive line goes too.
And I'm not talking about strictly these OTAs and what we're seeing here, because it is a limited picture we're getting of this. But from the end of last season to where the Dolphins are right now, have they made a big step forward? Have they kind of remained neutral in your mind, or are they starting to close that gap? I say close the gap on New England. It's hard to say because New England's gap kind of it's a moving target, that gap.
No, I don't think the Patriots are worried about the Dolphins this year. I think they're worried about the 72 Dolphins. I think they're gunning for 19-0 this year. They have completely loaded up. That is going to be as talented as a Patriots team as we've seen in a while. Now, you can't just say, okay, we're playing for second place. Right. You obviously got to go and try to win the division. But thank goodness there is a wild card, right? Thank goodness there are other opportunities to get in. You don't have to finish ahead of the Patriots to get into the playoffs. I think they have closed the gap on the road standard. I think that's the good way to put it because last year you talked to these guys privately. They knew, you know what? We weren't very good on defense at all. We weren't very good on third down on offense. Basically, what we got by on were big plays. They had a bunch of explosive plays. They're one of the biggest big play teams in the league. These coaches know that's not sustainable. You can't build an offense around, hey, Jay Ajayi is going to break an 80-yard touchdown run and win us the game every week. You just can't do that. So I think what they've done is gotten more consistent. They've gotten enough good, solid players to make it so if they don't get that bomb to Devontae Parker or Jay Ajayi busts one, or they get a kickoff return from Kenyon Drake, they have other ways to win. Yeah, but you look at them, and the one thing I like about this staff, and a lot of things I like about this staff and where the organization is right now, but they're not kidding themselves. They're not sitting there, hey, we're 10-6. Hey, we did this, and defensively we made a lot of big plays. Oh yeah, but you got 4.8 yards per carry, and and your numbers are so askew on the defensive side of the football. They know that. And they know, and I talked to Coach Gaze a while back and talked about, with Matt Burke, kind of just tightening things up a little bit up front and trying to close those gaps and cut those numbers down. But ultimately, it comes down to me, it comes down to one thing: points against. That's the only stat to me that matters as a defensive player, is how many points do we give up per game, per season. That's going to be the telling number. You could give up 350 yards a game and hold people to 10 points, and you're going to win the majority of your games. Bend but don't break, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's the old theory of the bend but don't break. Make them take 15 plays to get to the end zone, and if it takes them 15 plays every drive, they're going to make a mistake, and we're going to be there to take advantage of it. I
think the one thing the Dolphins needed to get better at after watching the Patriots game end of last year and the Steelers playoff game is team speed on defense. You saw too many end arounds, guys running free. I just couldn't catch them. Some of that,
but you know, some
of that's being taken bad angles, of course.
Well, some of it's bad. Look, one of the things I've got with this team, they've got to concentrate, or they've got to spend some time on their backside contain. Because they run action away, that backside just races, and then you see those reverses only work if you don't have anyone in the backside containing. Quarterback, those naked boots, where you go out there and the quarterback just stand there waiting for that tight end to just. I remember in Philadelphia a couple years ago waiting for Brent Selleck to lope across the field. I go that. By the time he got off the line, the guy standing there, I think it was who was the quarterback that.
Was it Foles?
No. He was a kid that came from Oklahoma.
Bradford?
Sam Bradford.
Yeah.
And Sam Bradford's standing out there, and I'm going. He's waiting, and he's going, waiting. And here's Brent Selleck loping. Boom, hit him. I think they did it 3 times in a row. So to me, that's a schematic thing they've got to fix.
What was your number one job when you played? Set the edge, right?
My number one job as a defensive end and as an outside linebacker, when I played outside linebacker, depending on the coverage, was outside contained, whether the ball was coming my way or going away. You know, the backside rule for me was always be deep as the deepest. If you're deep as the deepest, in other words, if that quarterback drops back deep, as long as you get as deep as him, nothing's going to get by you. You're going to be able to force everything in. It's when you hug the line of scrimmage and try to close things down. Now it opens everything on the backside.
And I think that was one of their biggest problems last year. They had such trouble setting the edge, outside containing, however we're going to say it, and guys were just getting around them and running wild. So if they can fix that, and that's pretty elementary stuff, right? That's football 101.
It's not hard to do, no. It's just a discipline. I always say this, if you're the backside defensive end, because they're running a 4-3, if that's a backside defensive end and they're running a sweep to the other side or a toss or something to the other side, that guy is rarely going to make the play on that side anyway. So do your job. Get up the field. Make sure there's nothing coming back. And if things start, if it comes back, then you can close down. But, you don't see some of that. So those are some of the things I think they need to work on. But they've got the personnel to do it. They just got to get through that. And I think last year they had more things on their plate than just that.
Right.
That they were worried about. But I think that's something I'd like to see them work on a little bit this year.
I think having Rashad Jones back is going to fix a lot of problems because he is one of their soundest tacklers. He is one of their biggest playmakers, and that was somewhere they had deficiencies in both places last year. So if he can make those tackles, I remember when he got hurt in the first Steelers game, and there was that end around, the guy bounced off him. You could just see his shoulder wasn't right. He's not going to have those busts this year. No doubt. Hey, what do you say we go ahead and take a few questions here? Sounds good.
Black man game. Which guys do you have a man crush on after today? Well, you've seen them twice, so who are you looking at that's jumped out on you?
I mean, Charles Harris. We talked about at the top of the show. He is as advertised. You talk to these coaches, these staffers privately, and they say he does everything right. He's got the head and the shoulders, and he's got the physical game too. So honestly, the hype train, I don't want to let it leave the station completely. But if you're a Dolphins fan,
you're shoveling coal in there right now.
I would buy a number 90 jersey. That's all I'm going to say. Buy a number 90 jersey.
Too. I tell you, I'm kind of looking at the defensive backfield. I'm looking at T.J. McDonald, and I liked a lot what I saw at Tankersley. Just from the way he goes about his business, carries himself, and gets himself in position. He looks like a guy that's played cornerback in the National Football League before.
Right.
He's got that. I'm talking about Tankers. He's got that way about him that he feels very comfortable.
Let me ask you this: they're going to be in sub nickel package, whatever you're going to call it, probably 60-70% of the time. 4 boundaries, but Bob McCain's your nickel. I mean, how's that going to work out?
I don't know. I don't know if they're going to be able to find one of those other corners that can slip in the inside.
I guess Xavier Howard's the only one that might be able to.
But I don't think they're going to want. I think they're going to want Xavier to be that boundary corner. They're going to want him outside and see. And look, I don't know what Tankersley. I don't know if he fits in that deal, but that it certainly is a concern. But like I said earlier, just give me as many corners as you've got out there and many safeties, and you'll shake out who that guy's going to be.
Michael Thomas can play a little nickel if they need to. But we saw today, one thing that defensive backfield does not lack for is moxie. Did you see it after practice, all the trash that was being talked?
No.
Because the DBs destroyed the offense today. It was their day. Adam Gase acknowledges it. And we have a picture on the Herald's website of Bob McCain, Tony Lippett, just chirping down Jarvis and Ryan Tannehill.
Right.
If your young corners can do that to some of your franchise cornerstones, look out. I mean, this is a confident bunch.
Well, and the other thing too, it's you can see that the coaching staff creates that feeling of challenging people,
right?
Of competing every snap, and you see it out there. They're competing and they're talking, and to me, that's all good stuff. That's all. To me, that's all good energy going on in the practice field.
Sometimes an occasional pushing and shoving is going to happen in the NFL.
Right. Yeah, it happens. At Kevin Dolphin, will Howard be an elite cornerback in the future? I think so. I was impressed with Xavier when we saw him when he first came back from the injury after preseason last year. Got very little work during the preseason. Looked strong. Got hurt again, and then when he was forced in the game when Maxwell got hurt against the Jets. Lined up on Brandon Marshall and just shut him down the rest of the game.
Completely shut him down.
I was like, hey, this kid's the real deal.
Obviously, you would look for more consistency out of him.
Well, yeah, but I mean, here's a kid that hardly practiced last year, barely did anything during training camp, did nothing during the preseason games, but when you stuck him in games, he played well for you.
No, I agree completely. I think there's a lot of upside for him. Yeah. But again, we don't know who's going to be on the field yet. You'd have to think that he's going to beat out Lippett and be the starter. Yeah. But nonetheless, I think it's a really good problem for them to have.
Well, absolutely. Look, the best thing would be for when
he's got to stay healthy.
The best thing would be week one going into the season for the Dolphins to be the coaching staff to be scratching their head, going, "Man, I don't know, do we put him or this guy in? We got two guys here that are equally as good. Which one do we start? I mean, you'd love to be in that situation."
Rashad loves Lippett. He talked about it yesterday. How he's the one guy that's impressed him. So again, that's a good problem to have because Tankersley, yes, you're impressed by him, but they don't have to rush him in.
No.
Well,
and then there's a rotation guy too. There's that. I mean, it's funny. It used to be, that your base defense, your base offense, it was always going to be in there on first down. If you didn't get 4 yards on, they was going. If you got 4 yards, it was going to be base again. And it was going to be now you come out in open games and they're 4 wide, they're spreading the field. So you've got to have as many DBs back there as ready to go and be able to spread out that field with them.
I think one reason they like Tankersley a lot is that they feel like he can cover tight ends. Yeah. And what do the Patriots have?
Yeah,
all the tight ends basically.
Yeah, no doubt. Speaking of tight ends, the tight end that Julius Thomas, big body out there. He looks. He certainly is going to take up some space and take up some eyes from the defensive coordinators that line up against this team.
I think Jordan Cameron getting hurt last year really limited that offense because they didn't have that seam buster. And again, Julius Thomas has got his own injury concerns. He was banged up a bunch in Jacksonville. But if he can be the guy from, 13 and 14 in Denver when he was catching 12 touchdowns a year, look out. I mean, there might not be enough footballs to go around. And they want to get Jay Ajayi, 350 carries. They want to get Kenyon Drake involved. Yeah. And you have Jarvis Devontae. Kenny Stills, your new $32 million man.
That's a pretty good problem to have when you've got that many targets that you want to get the ball to.
It'll all start with the protection. If they can get protection, if Ryan can stay healthy and upright, this offense could be really good this year.
Any concerns about Ryan that you've seen of him moving around out there?
No.
Looks fine to me.
I mean, again, we'll believe it. We see it now. It looks encouraging. We'll believe it when he takes that first hit. Who do they play in the opener? Whatever the preseason opener is.
Oh, I don't know the preseason.
Yeah, he'll get hit once or twice in that game. Yeah. He'll get hit a bunch more, probably the third game when they play the first half. If he bounces back, and not only how the knee responds, but how this responds too. He has to be able to show when that pressure's coming. He doesn't think about the knee at all.
Well, let me tell you what, the concern in his head would be a lot more had he gone through surgery than where it's at right now. I guarantee that, because once you get that first surgery, then it really, here's a guy that hasn't been, at least since he's been here, hasn't had those knees cut on. So I think it's a pretty good situation.
Your thoughts on him?
Huh?
Your thoughts on
I think
Ryan?
he looks fine back there. I mean, I was watching him before, and he's working on his footwork, working on plants, and this and that. And there's nothing I see from him that makes you feel that he's even thinking about that knee at all.
Right. That's the
most important thing.
That is the most important
He's out there
part.
natural, running around, throwing. And I know it's just without pads, but I feel pretty good about him. At Mills Jerry 80, Bo, love the show. Can't get any better news about the Finns in Western New York. Keep it up. Appreciate it. I'm glad you're listening to us and watching us. We'll try to keep it going. Is this a relative of yours?
No, it's not, but it's good to see in Bill's country we got some Dolphins fans.
Yeah, there's plenty of Dolphin fans up there. Heck, you look around. That's the other thing, last year. It's funny because when you're here in this market and you stay around here, everyone complains about, we always got the other team's fans coming in. None of them go on the road. You're on the road. I mean, there's a pretty good contingent of Dolphin fans.
LA was
a good majority of places. San Diego was crazy. a couple of years ago in Washington was
and they take over
nuts.
They took over New York, particularly when they played the Jets late in the year. The Jets are already mailed it in. And look, we got to give the Dolphins credit for this. They've sold out. They sold out their entire first year with the new stadium. They're going to do it again this year. Yeah, it's a little bit smaller, but I think it's smarter because it's got great seats now. You're not sitting basically in Hialeah to watch the game anymore.
And it's got an atmosphere. It's loud inside that building.
That roof definitely keeps sounding.
No doubt about it. It really makes the atmosphere. It really makes the whole experience a lot more enjoyable.
And you're down the field, right?
Yeah, it's loud, man. At Juris Dolphin, I know it's difficult to gauge DTs without pads, but how have Taylor and Gottschall looked?
I'll defer to you on that one.
Yeah, you know what? I watched those guys out there today a little bit, and they all look the same to me.
Yeah.
I mean, in this situation, they all look the same. I tell you, the one guy that just jumps out at me is Sue, and not so.
You
much,
don't say.
Well, no, not so much for what he does right at the line of scrimmage, but I was watching today, and much like he did ever since he's been here, they threw a little screen pass out, and all the other defensive linemen were kind of at the line of scrimmage. He's down the field chasing the guy down.
Right, and he does that all the time.
He does that all the time.
You know why he does that? To get that ball out, because
punch out.
They've already given up a big play. You got to get that ball out.
And if you don't think it pays off, just go back and look at the film of Colin Kaepernick last year when he was getting ready to run in the end zone, and
that pursuit saved their game.
That's exactly it. So, at Trey636, any news on Brandon Doughty and his progression? He's out there, probably going to be the third-team quarterback again. They've got David Fales out there, a San Jose State guy that. I don't know that he's going to push this guy.
No.
Brandon Doughty. I think Doughty's a guy that he's
if they keep three.
If they keep three, he's the perfect kind of a third quarterback that you want. A young guy trying to progress, see how good he can be. And I always tell people this, when there's always seems to be that consternation about our third quarterback. And my answer,
do you know what needs to happen?
My answer is always the same. Let me tell you this. Whoever that third quarterback is, if we get there, we got no chance to win anyway, so it doesn't matter at that point.
Yeah, it's funny because remember last year at the end, that Patriots game was meaningless. Yeah. And I was half joking, hey, we should probably sit Matt Moore, right?
Right, yeah.
Because you got a chance against Pittsburgh with Matt Moore. You don't have a chance with Brandon Doughty.
Yeah, exactly. A man called Jane. 2 things I'd like to see on D this year: discipline on assignments and discipline on penalties. I couldn't say it any better. I think if you talk to any of the coaches and the coaching staff, especially on the defensive side of the football, one of the things they've got to get better at is the discipline of their players. No running around blocks. If your job is to get up the field and set the edge, you got to get up the field to set the edge. If your job is to 2-gap and be able to take both sides, you got to do it instead of taking 1 gap, because when you do, you open the lane.
Right.
All that stuff, little discipline things is important. And penalties are penalties again. This is a team that
I think they're 3rd or 4th last year in penalties.
A lot of penalties. Now, I've had conversations with Adam and different coaches about this. There's 2 different ways to look at it with penalties. I grew up in a system with Don Shula where if you got penalized during practice, it was, you heard about it. It was important to him, and we were one of the least penalized teams throughout the tenure of Don Shula. The Dolphins are one of the least penalized teams in the National Football League. Talk to some coaches now, and they're like, the hell with the penalties. We'll overcome
passion. We want the passion.
We want that. We want our guys going. We want you going hard. And if you get a penalty card, so be it. We'll a penalty call. Now, I would say as long as it's an on the field in action penalty, I can understand.
The dumb stuff.
It's the sideline stuff plays over.
Right.
You've made a first down. Guy throws an elbow at the bench. Here comes a 15-yard penalty. Your drive's over. You'll go back, and instead of having a first down, now you're punting the ball in 2 downs.
It seemed like that happened all the time last year.
Those are the penalties that absolutely have to be resolved. If a guy's trying to make an effort and clip somebody or one of those
maybe
things,
those 2 handsy downfield.
Then okay, so be it. But those penalties are the penalties that you can live without, and there's no reason for them to begin with.
No, and I think you make a great point, and it's one that we should probably talk about a little bit, is that we talk about the defense, clean up the missed assignments and mental errors. All that stuff's fixable. It's not like these guys last year were just getting blown off the field, right? It's not like they were getting shoved back 5 yards down the line of scrimmage every time somebody ran the football. They were just doing dumb stuff.
Things, yeah.
So, again, you hope it gets fixed, and they brought in a bunch of new players to help fix it. But you can get that better, and if you can, what did they rank? They were certainly they were 30th in rush last year, and not much better in total.
28th or something like that. Yeah.
Even if you make a jump from 30th to 15th,
you don't have to be the best.
No,
just get from where you were last year, get to the middle of the pack.
Because as we talked about, I think that offense is good enough to win them a lot of games.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So yeah, I'm with you on that. I think that that stuff. You just have to think about it to get it resolved. So, at McLovin, how do you guys feel about the coach taking the logos off the rookie helmets this year? Well, you know what, that used to be kind of the tradition in the National Football League. If you were a rookie, you got a blank helmet, and once you made the team, then they put the logo on it. I remember coming to the Dolphins, and when I was a rookie, and you didn't have a logo on your helmet. Until the first preseason game. Once they put the logos on for the preseason game, then then we're going to peel them off and do it again. So
no, I mean, again, Adam's kind of a master of these little mental games, right? Last year, what was it? Strain. That was a T-shirt, and it made sense because this was a team that we talked about passion that may not have played to the maximum effort in years past. And so he knew strain. Well, this year, what's the idea? Zero in. All those little mental errors we were talking about, you got to zero in. If he feels like these rookies need a kick in the backside, and by the way, I'm not casting aspersions on this rookie class. I actually hear they're very good, professional. Their heads are on their shoulders. But if he thinks they need a little extra kick in the backside, it doesn't bother me one bit.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And, it's funny. One thing you said earlier when you're talking about this team, and even when they were 1-4 last year. And I would say it, and people would look at me like, "What are you, an idiot?" So look, they may be 1-4, but they haven't lacked for effort. This team never lacked for effort during the course of last year. And to me, one of the hardest things to get out of a football team is that effort on a week in, week out basis. And they certainly had that. Even at that 1-4 start, you look at them and you go, well, look, it's not because they went out there and just threw their helmets on the field.
Right.
They're out there playing. They just didn't play very smart.
You can coach fundamentals. You cannot coach hard.
Yeah, no doubt.
And this team has heart. There's no question about that.
Get the Juice at Get the Juice 14. When do you think Jarvis will sign?
We should ask Jarvis about that.
That's something that you probably you dig into that kind of stuff a lot more than I do. So I'm gonna defer to you on that one.
He talked about it today. It was the first time we've spoken to him since the end of last year. Yeah. And he said the right things. Look, this is a team that does not like holdouts. Rashad obviously had that situation last year, and he had to wait 12 months to get his contract. I don't think it's going to be that long for Jarvis, but he is very cognizant that if I go out there and say, look, pay me. Yeah. I am the best receiver on this team. I'm one of the best receivers of football. Pay me like it. Yeah. The Dolphins aren't going to react well to that. Yeah. So Adam's thing is, look, you play hard, you do the right thing, you zero in, and you keep your head down. Yeah. We're going to take care of you. And they've shown it time and time again. Rashad Jones, Kiko Alonso, Kenny Stills, Andre Branch. At some point, the Dolphins are going to give a lot of money to Jarvis Landry. I just don't know when it is. Yeah, and I think, look, I think they're trying to throw some things out to Jarvis too. Look, Jarvis isn't perfect. I love Jarvis. We're talking about these after the whistle penalties. That, but some other things too. I mean, he's got some discipline things and I'm not talking about that kind of discipline. Route running, some certain things that I think they want to see him get better at. And this may be a situation where they're saying to him, and I don't know, we don't know what they're saying behind closed doors, but it could be, hey Jarvis, you clean this stuff up a little bit, and you'll get paid. But you need to, we need to see you go from here to here before we put this contract out here in front of you. I don't think it's any secret. Adam Gase talked about it today, that very thing, that yes, first year in a new offense, you're going to have some growing pains. They can't exist anymore. You have to, if your depth for your in route is 7 yards, you better hit that 7 yards, or else the quarterback's going to look to the left side and his brain's going to be scrambled because you're in the wrong place, and where does he go with the football? I think that was a lot of the problems last year. Some of these picks, and you have these analytics sites that say maybe 2 or 3 of Tannehill's interceptions are actually on him, just terrible throws. Right. What was that Bengals game where late in the game it just looked like egregious? Who was he looking at? We found out later it was a complete bust by his receivers. Yep, no doubt. Yep. So it's I think, look, he's going to get his contract. It's just a matter of time. At NWMNZ use 89. I don't know how you come up with it. That's a lot of work. If Dolphins make an offer to Jarvis, but he declines, do you think he will leave? No. You know why? Because they have the franchise tag. That's right. At ADOC 2007, when do they start practicing in pads? Would love to see O-line progress. Do they get to practice in some pads next week? No. Mini camp.
No, not until training camp. Okay, so that answers the question. I thought I'd heard somewhere where maybe they would put pads on for one of the practice sessions.
I think it's the third day of training camp, so whatever that is, probably that Sunday of training camp.
Okay. At Krusty Sock, when did they start taking the names off helmets in camp? Probably the last time I wore Krusty Socks was probably the last time that they had names on helmets. I think some teams probably still do it. I think probably the reason they don't do it here or don't do it now, a lot of teams, is because by the time they get to put helmets on, they've been around these guys so much that they used to put them on because you'd bring 120 guys to camp, and the coaches had no time with them prior to the day training camp opened. And so you had to know who was who, you know.
Well, here's one thing I don't know how Belichick pulls it off. They have their mini camps, or they used to before the NFL got in their case. No, how the hell do they know what they're doing? Like, how do they know? How can they tell Edelman and Amendola apart? I can't. I can't do it now when I see them in person.
Because you play assignments. You play. You're the week back.
I guess.
It doesn't matter what number it is on them. And I guess my thought would be more, how do you know when you're watching films? Then you start getting.
Right. That's the point I'm making. How do they know which one's which?
Yeah. Let me see. Is our season, Periscope, is our season going to go down to how Ryan Tannehill performs? Well, I think. Look, I don't care if you're the Miami Dolphins. I don't care if you're the Bengals, the Texans, the Seahawks, whoever. Chances are your season is going to go as your quarterback goes.
Right.
And I don't think the Dolphins are any different behind Ryan Tannehill.
No, I agree. I think that Matt Moore is an excellent backup, might be the best backup in football, but Ryan Tannehill is the best quarterback on this team, and it's not even close, I don't think.
Not even close, no.
So if he's on his game, and he had the best year of his career last year, they think that's the ceiling, and that's a floor. They think the ceiling is very high for him.
Yeah.
If he has 5,000 yards, if he has 35 touchdowns, we could be talking about a long playoff run for this football team.
No doubt, But they've got to get there, and they've got to protect him. He's got to make the right decision. Still like to see him get rid of that ball just a beat quicker. Even out there today, you're looking at. There's a couple times where you're going
throw the ball.
I'm in my mind. I've got my clock going. I go throw it, and he's.
Well, part of this because Xavier Howard's all over the receivers.
Well, that's it. Yeah, but you know what? Again, but at the same time, I'm thinking too is, you look at practice differently than I look at practice.
You know what you're looking at.
No, but what I would if I'm coaching a quarterback, especially a guy like Ryan, I'd have a clock behind him or with a buzzer behind him. It's going to go off at 3.1 seconds or whatever that thing is, and every time, and just to get him to, because what does it matter if he throws an interception in practice out here? It in the scope of things, it means nothing. But if you do that and make him throw the ball sooner, and he starts throwing the ball into a window that he normally doesn't think is there, but he realizes, hey, I can fit that ball in there. I can do that. And then you get in the game, now you do it. Now, I know you guys count interceptions during these practices, but I'd rather have my guys throw interceptions in these practices and see if they can fit that ball into a small space and be confident that I can get the ball in there in a game situation. I'd rather have them work on it in training camp, OTAs, and all those places rather than working on it in the middle of the game.
I completely agree, but then there also is the thinking, you play how you practice. Yeah. And if you're turning the ball over all the time in practice, it's not a great sign. Yeah. But I agree. This point in the year, we shouldn't be counting interceptions.
Yeah. Joey Bag of Donuts, do you think Jarvis making number 42 on the top 100 list makes a difference in his contract negotiations? I would say this. Absolutely not one iota of a difference does that make when it comes to negotiating his contract. Now his agent's going to throw that out there all he wants, but I don't think he's going to get a whole lot of bite from.
What's going to make a big difference when they turn on the film and he's destroying people.
That's it. That's
what's going to make the difference in the contract. And again, he'll probably get 5 years, $60 million, maybe a little bit more. That's the neighborhood.
Yeah.
And you know what? That's the market for a receiver of his caliber. It just needs to get done at some point.
Yep. Wrap it up with A. Oliver 714. Bo, what's the X factor on the defense? Well, it's going to be, to me, the X factor on the defense is the linebackers. Now the linebackers are going to play. I'm very comfortable with what we did in the backfield in the secondary as far as the numbers of people. We talked about that earlier. I think they'll find another defensive tackle that can complement, and hopefully it's Jordan Phillips to complement Sue. It seems like they found a legitimate defensive end in Harris. They've gone out and got Hayes, a run-stopping defensive end. They've settled up with Andre Branch. I think that the biggest concern for me on defense, much like last year going in, is how the linebackers are going to play.
I think not a concern, but the X factor for me, Cam Wake. We haven't discussed him once this show. 35 years old. If he goes out and has another 12 to 14 sacks, look out.
Yep. No, he's and you know what? Chance of him getting more sacks now, especially if you got if this guy Harris turns out to be the defense of the pass rusher everyone hopes he's going to be.
Think about this. You got in sub packages Harris, Sue, Branch, Wake, or if you want to put Sue and Wake together, that's fine with me too.
Yeah, exactly.
My goodness.
Yeah, no doubt. And you put Kiko in there, you can throw him in on a blitz every now and then and create some problems. So, yeah, there's certainly some opportunities out there. So, yeah, it's going to look, I think it's going to be a very interesting offseason, going to be a very interesting training camp, and we'll see. So, I got one more week of OTAs, one more shot to see him next week.
And then mini camps.
And then mini camp. Mini camps are open mini camps open to the public?
No, but for us, all 3 days.
Man, the public is they're kind of getting shut out all this stuff, huh?
You know, the NFL monetizes everything. Just buy tickets, have it at the stadium.
Well, they tried that with who tried that? Snyder tried that. That didn't go over so well up there.
Oh, well. You'll get to see plenty of Dolphins football starting in August.
Yeah, no doubt. Adam, always a pleasure, my
man. Thanks for having me on.
Adam Beasley from the Miami Herald. I'm Kim Bokamper. That's going to do it for the Audible. We'll see you again on Friday.